Hi, I'm Dr. Veronica, and welcome back. We've been having this incredible dialogue around building a strong brand reputation. I happen to believe that it is incredibly important, whether you're in a job that you aspire to maybe retire from, whether you're interested in promoting up or in a different department, or whether you're really interested in starting your own business and building a brand that serves your clients. I happen to believe building a strong brand is central to anybody looking to improve their value and really begin to operate on another level. So when I talked about the first segment, it really was all around this idea of how do we build credibility? How do we build this idea of expertise so that we are the go-to people for certain abilities, certain skills, certain competencies, or certain knowledge, so that we become more valuable to our professional community. So we spent an entire session really devoted to this conversation about credibility and expertise. Today, I'd like to dive into a conversation that really is kind of akin to that, but it's more about how do you and I build these professional relationships, and how do we build relationships that are positive and they are steeped in trust. And I'd like to say that when I think about building positive professional relationships and I think about trust, I think they are two sides of the very same coin. So we're going to talk about what that means. But I wanted to open this segment by simply kind of defining in a way what I mean when I talk about positive professional relationships. I mean, let's face it, we have different calibers and qualities of relationships, partnerships in our professional communities. But what I want to talk about today are things that I think are mutually respectful. So those relationships are kind of symbiotic in that I respect you, you respect me, I respect what you bring to the table, you respect what I bring to the table. I think that respect is critically important. Secondly, we have some area of shared interest or shared values. Why is this important? Because there's some level of alignment for us. We are common in some level of interest, some priority, some project. And then I think finally it's about, is it a positive relationship? Meaning, does it support your well-being? So for me, we're just gonna say that the characteristics of the relationship that I'm talking about today are, is it respectful? Is it mutually valuing, right? We have some alignment of our value systems. We're aligned in some interest, some commonality. And is it positive? Is it producing a great output in me? Is it supporting my well-being? If it's not, then it's not the relationship I'm talking about building when it comes to a positive brand, okay? So why does it matter? Why do these professional relationships matter? And this is really important for people who are maybe a little more introverted, maybe a little less, socially motivated. Like, you can have a strong brand and you can build incredible relationships and collaboratives and partnerships that don't mean that you have to act outside of your personality. It doesn't mean that you have to become a social butterfly. It doesn't mean anything like that. So let's talk about exactly what I do mean. Why I believe part of how you and I develop a strong brand reputation really relies on the quality of those interactions, the quality of those relationships, the quality of those partnerships, is because relationships are center stage for everything we do in life, right? They are the cornerstone of everything we do. And so what I believe that if we really understand the value of this partnership, what it does is it enables things like collaboration and inclusion. Inclusion is a powerful, what I would call, competence these days, right? So it's important that you and I understand that these relationships really do promote things like collaboration and inclusion. That's important for us. They open doors for amazing career opportunities and advancement. Typically, somebody taps us on the shoulder and says, hey, have you heard about, there's an opening in, I think you'd be great for, right? So it's important. Those relationships are how we find out about our next door of opportunity in many instances. And it's a great way for you to build a personal and professional network, a support system. Why is that critical? because nobody knows everything, right? So the greater your network and the greater your support system, man, you've got access to resources, you've got access to tools, to knowledge, to make better qualitative decisions because you have people who know what you don't know, right? That's incredibly important. So when it comes to this network, this is how we share resources, just in time best practices. But it's not only that, it's also about reputation building. Because when people talk about us, it's in some way that is either promoting who we are or it's working against who we aspire to be. So really, it's those relationships where people are talking about their experience with us, their interaction with us, how we collaborated on a project. That relationship building capacity exists in those relationships. 9 times out of 10, that's how people really prefer to think about us, as a collection of interactions that they know about, that we've had with people, and what those experiences and those outcomes were, okay? So it's important. Now, how do you and I go about building what I would consider these positive professional relationships? Well, let me just start by saying the greatest connector on the planet is trust. The currency of trust, there's nothing like it. If you just thought for a few minutes about the relationships you have with colleagues, coworkers, peers, best friends, partners in life, trust is an essential foundation if those partnerships and relationships are going to thrive. If they're going to stand the test of time and have longevity and depth, you have to have trust. So that's critically important. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about 3 superstars that I believe really produce trust as a competence. And I don't know anybody who's working to build a brand that isn't thinking about these 3 things, okay? The first one is credibility. Credibility fosters trust. People need to know they can rely on you, that you are credible. You have accurate information. Not only is it accurate, they can trust your judgment. Your judgment is sound. You make great decisions. Your decision-making quality is great. So credibility is powerful. It assures people that not only do you have the goods, you have the character to fulfill on a commitment. You have the qualitative, knowledge, the skill, the expertise, the competence, but you have the character to deliver on the promise. Credibility is powerful. The more credible you are, the more people trust you, the more you'll find that you're invited in moments where people need a trustworthy colleague, a collaborative partner that they can trust. The second one that I think is incredibly important is reliability. Now, reliability is just when you're consistent and you follow through on those commitments. You become in some ways predictable for people. And predictable isn't a bad word. It just means that you're going to do exactly what we envision you're going to do. You're going to finish what you said. You're going to follow through on your word. You are reliable. People can rely on you. That gives people a true sense of security. That goes a long way when people can rest on the fact that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. You're going to do it the way you said you're going to do it. You're going to finish it when you said you'd finish it. That you can be counted on to do exactly what you're going to do. That's powerful. So that level of assurance goes a long way in building trust. The third one that I'm talking about when we're talking about kind of these superpowers, we're talking about credibility, we're talking about reliability. Now, the third one is empathy. I wish I could tell you how far empathy would really take you. There's a lot of people who still believe that for me to be vulnerable or empathetic is somehow a weakness, that for me to demonstrate that I genuinely care about you and can demonstrate that care through my emotion and still stay connected to the objective reason that we are here, what we can do together, and not lose the fact that you're a human being, that you deserve my compassion, that you deserve my empathy, and if there's a way I can help alleviate suffering, I should go about doing that. So empathy is one of those things that for me demonstrates that you understand the value of other people, the value of their feelings, the value of their perspective, the value of their thoughts around ideas. Now, I believe that empathy is how we truly connect to each other. In the absence of empathy, the other two won't get you very far. It is the true place where we really connect on a human level, and everything else becomes kind of an addendum. The other thing I'll say about empathy that I think is really important is there's probably not a greater ask on the planet in our day and in our time than people wanting to feel respected, people wanting to feel seen, and people wanting to be heard. Empathy does just that. So the superpowers for how you and I are going to build trust are going to be just that. We're going to work to become credible. We're going to work to become reliable, which is predictable around what we say we're going to do and how we're going to get that done. And then you and I are going to work to be empathetic people, people who, in the midst of great work and valued contribution, we're going to be people who care about others, who care about their feelings, their emotions, who care about their opinions and perspectives, and who respect people, even the people who we may not always agree with. So, we've talked a little bit about the so what of all of this, why it's important, the potential benefits for you. We've talked a little bit about trust being the chief cornerstone of kind of all that builds true and authentic connection. Now where I'd like to go is I want us to think about maybe some practical tips for how you and I really can begin nurturing those relationships. You know, I'd like to, and if I could reverse the order of those, I would start with empathy, because I think empathy is where openness begins. You know, so nevertheless, I want you to take a moment to just really think about the value of those three as we move into the practical tips. And then of course, I'm gonna have a reflective exercise for you so that you can put in practice the things we're talking about today. All right? So now we're gonna move into what in the world could you and I be doing to really improve on the quality of our relationships and really build that trust as a foundation so that people do see us as trustworthy, as confidants and collaboratives, as colleagues in incredibly important valued work. The first one I would like to say, and again, I say this kind of also, you know, this is like one of the things about me that you may or may not know. Like, I love to speak, I love to teach, I love to workshop, I love to create content, I love all of that. But I also am somewhat of an introvert. I know that goes like, you are probably looking at the camera thinking, are you kidding? But I am. And so what that simply means is that I have to go and kind of, in some ways, power up again after those kinds of events. I just need to spend that time, you know, kind of refilling my own tank. But I'm saying that because I want to be an example for you to say that if I can do this and be somewhat on the cusp of both introvert and extrovert, you can too. So it doesn't mean you got to walk in the party and be the star. It just means you have to learn how to navigate a world where people matter. And not only people matter, relationships and interactions matter most. All right. So the first one is, I want you to begin to engage in conversations. I know this seems like one of those things that to me, sometimes people are like, that's not so easy. If I put you in the room and I ask you to, you know, find 3 people and develop a conversation that you will remember, that informs you about them, maybe something that inspires you, you could do that. You could do that, right? So it doesn't have to be hard, but it's really important that we demonstrate a genuine interest in other people, that you and I demonstrate some level of curiosity about who people are, how they are, why they are. So initiating conversation is a powerful technique to begin to build meaningful connection and relationships from. In these moments, it's an opportunity for you to share your own insights, for you to gain insights, and it really speaks volumes when we care about who people are. That goes a long way. People call that being personable. People call that being caring and all those things. So initiating conversation is one. The second one is I want you to look for opportunities. Seek opportunities to collaborate, to share knowledge, to share information. I want you to look for ways that really allow you to support the outcome, the progress of someone else. I want you to build activities into your calendar that support what somebody else is doing, those objectives. So just to give you an example, I was talking to a person the other day, and he's going to have just a little bit of time just because certain things are falling off the table. And he just thought, man, this would be a great opportunity for me to see how I can serve other departments. Wow, what an incredible idea. Looking for a way already to build his brand outside of his own peers, outside of his own team, outside of his own department. That's incredibly valuable. And I'll tell you why. Most of us have a brand that exists on a team. Maybe we have a brand that only exists for my manager and nobody else gets that part of me, But you do yourself a huge disservice if your brand is isolated to just a unique silo of people, a unique person, maybe one department. You have to figure out how to create this level of branding that is beyond this idea of position centricity, right? You have to build a brand that is larger than your department. You got to build an organizational brand. You got to build a world brand. So I think that what he aspires to do is incredibly powerful and incredibly important to his brand. So I want you to take an opportunity, see if you can, weigh in on some projects. Can you collaborate on some initiatives? Can you ask about something that's coming up in the future and see if you can put your hat in the ring on that? Those things tell people a lot about you, and incredibly a lot about you. The third one I want you to consider is transparent communication. Now, communication is tricky, right? Because so much of what we say isn't in our words. So much of what we say is in email, so much of what we say is in a text message, so much of what we say is in a note or a report, right? There's all these modalities of communication. But I want you to consider like transparent communication, which is nobody's asking you for updates, but give them anyway. Say, you know what, I just want to give an update on where I am with this particular project. I want to tell you what I'm experiencing, the challenges. I want to tell you where I'm meeting incredible success. Like that's important communication that sometimes people shouldn't have to ask us for. If we'll go ahead and tell them how we're doing, how we're tracking along, right? That's important. The other thing I think that's important is we tell people in some ways where we're having great success. We give feedback to them around specific things, and we also ask and invite feedback. Now, I know feedback is one of those things people just don't like to receive, but I'm gonna be really honest with you. Until you can get to a point where you can receive feedback in a way that is incredibly self-supporting, right? So that all feedback is seen as self-support. All feedback is seen as something I can do to improve, to groom, to become the best version and vision of myself possible. Until you can see feedback as that growth serum, you're gonna be missing invaluable pieces of information about you that allow you to navigate your blind spots. All right, so I want you to hold on to that and remember that. Asking for feedback is a critical part of how we communicate. When you're done with a project, maybe there's 3 questions you ask somebody. How'd I do on that project for you? Did I meet or exceed your expectation? Was there anything I could have done bigger, better, faster, stronger? Anything I could have done different? If I were redoing this in the future, do you have some level of recommendation or advisement for me, right? Because you want feedback, you want to get better. Of course you do, right? Okay, so that's a thing. Transparent communication. Even when it comes to priorities, it's just like saying to somebody, I would love to support you in this project, but right now I have 3 or 4 priorities that are taking up all of my time. If I wanted to be involved in this, is there something we could negotiate the priority that I'm currently carrying on? There's just ways to communicate with people so they know they're getting the best of you, and you're managing yourself in such a way that you're getting the best of you. You're running efficient and effective when it comes to you. Another one I would encourage you to do is provide value through knowledge sharing or offering assistance, which is just caring, right? Sometimes that's just introducing people. Have you ever found 2 people that you thought, oh my gosh, they would be great colleagues, they have so much in common, she could support him, he could support her, or whatever it is, and you throw the contacts out, and voila, it's this beautiful union, and they begin working or doing something in the future. What I will say is when it comes to people, people are sometimes like intricate pieces, right, of our world for us. And sometimes you can see very objectively who might support who best. So I would encourage you to provide your value through knowledge sharing, through asking how else could I participate. One of the things I like to do as I'm really thinking about my own next move is I like to ask, Maybe it's a board for you, maybe it's a direct manager for you, maybe it's HR for you, right? Maybe it's somebody who's in the industry you're in and kind of has a better track on the trends and can kind of see where things are going. Like ask, like if I were playing at a future level, like what would I be doing? What should I be doing? How can I be preparing myself? How can I be positioning myself to provide more value? Those things begin to build a brand way ahead of time, right? So you're already positioning yourself to be incredibly valuable, not just today, but also tomorrow. Another one I'll say when you're thinking about partnerships and you're thinking about, how do you build these incredible relationships is follow-ups. Follow-ups are incredibly important. Have you ever met somebody, you got a card, they got a card, and then I don't know, 2 months later you found the card and you're like, oh, I wish I had followed up. I wish I had just written a short little snippet, a little email saying, hey, it was great to meet you. Like develop a best practice around follow-ups, whether it's a business card, whether it's you meet somebody for the first time, maybe somebody is orienting to your department or the organization and you meet them. The follow-ups are so incredible because they sustain the connection. Those connections are vital. Those connections not only build your brand reputation, but they really support your personal development. How do they do that? Everything I'm talking about can be a way for you to develop and grow. When you get new opportunities, when you get to play at different levels, when you get to collaborate, when you get to weigh in on decisions, when you get to share resources, that all builds you. That all supports your personal development, which is what we're talking about. We're really talking about brewing brilliance and how do we develop ourselves? How do we furnish ourselves with enough of an investment so that ROI on you and I is we get to be the best version of ourselves possible. So people help us do that. I would like to believe the best learning labs I have ever had in my life haven't always been in the classroom. They haven't been academic. It's been through conversation, it's been through interaction, it's been through collaboration that I was developed, that I was able to grow, that I was able to expand my perspective. I was able to think differently. I was able to envision a different future for myself. So this idea of building these relationships isn't just about a brand. It's about how do you allow yourself to keep growing and going? How do you allow yourself to build? And if you are interested in that, then certainly people have a unique way of helping us grow up. It's a powerful thing. So what I want you to consider for a few minutes as we prepare kind of to wrap our session today is I want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the things I want you to do beyond this. I'm going to prepare to give you an exercise, but let's just see if we can go back to come forward. It's really important that you understand what characterizes these relationships. I like to call them like symbiotic relationships, relationships of mutual benefit. Now, it doesn't mean the benefit is the same, but it does mean we both benefit from the relationship, right? They're both respectful. That's important. We share values, we share interests. That's important. You understand and value what I do. I understand and value what you do. Those things are critical, right? We talked about that. And we talked about trust. Trust is the cornerstone for connection. And we talked about the 3 superpowers that really build and promote trustworthiness. We talked about credibility, we talked about reliability, and we talked about empathy. And then we really began to challenge ourselves with understanding how those really develop this currency of trust. And then what else could you and I begin doing to nurture and cultivate these types of relationships? What I'll say about a brand before I give you the exercise is, for me, there probably isn't a greater asset that you employ than your personal brand, your professional brand. It's your greatest asset. In many instances, when people are interviewing you for a job, yeah, they're looking at your resume, they're looking at the CV, but they're really looking at you. They're looking at the presence of the brand that's sitting in front of them. How you express yourself, how you articulate, how you communicate yourself, how you demonstrate care, how you are self-aware, all those things. And so this brand conversation is a powerful one. So now I want you to consider, I want you to find maybe a journal, maybe a sheet of paper, And on the journal, I want you to stop for a few minutes with me, and I want you to think about your peers, when you think about your colleagues, I want you to think about your team, I want you to think about your organization, I want you to think about recent interactions. So let's just go back 6 months to a year. Recent interactions, how you're currently engaging with your business circles, your professional networks, your support systems, your teams, your direct manager, and I want you to bring those all into the queue of this moment with you. I want you to really consciously consider your current professional relationships. If it's one, consider one. If you have more than one, just consider them. And then I want you to take on a sheet of paper, and you turn the paper maybe long ways, that landscape view, and I want you to create 3 columns. The first column, I want you to label credibility. The second column, I want you to label reliability. And the third column, I want you to label empathy. Credibility, reliability, and empathy. And I want you, using the gauge of those interactions, those relationships that are coming into your consciousness, those things that you are actively beginning to think about. And I want you actually to put, not a number, I want you to write down actionable ways you are demonstrating credibility, ways you are demonstrating reliability, ways you are demonstrating empathy, right? So reliability would mean something like maybe I am consistently delivering on this report by August 14th. Like August 14th is the time I delivered it, it was due, or maybe monthly. I create a board report every month. It's due by the second Tuesday. Every second Tuesday, I have the board report, right? So I want you to take a couple minutes and write down actionable behaviors, things you demonstrate that would support those 3 columns. I want you to pause, and I want you to take the time to do this. This is really important work for you. Sometimes people ask me, how do I move to the next level? How do I get people to see my value? These are some of those answers to the test. How you get people to see your value is you show up as a credible, reliable, empathetic human being. That's how you get people to see your value. How do you get to the next level? You show up as a credible, reliable, empathetic human being. That's how you get to the next level. How do you start a business? Oh, yes, you start a business by being credible, reliable to your clients, your customers, and being empathetic to their needs. Doesn't get any simpler than that, right? So after you have spent the time really thinking about, I want you to see how many behaviors, maybe you can get to at least 5 of each. Here's what I want you to consider afterwards. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to see if you can find a pattern. I want you to see if maybe the pattern is, you're really good at credibility and reliability, not so good at empathy. I want you to look for patterns. I want you to consider if there are people groups that your brand is stronger for and certain other people groups that it's not. Now that's a big one. I coach people all the time, and I'll be really honest, who say to me, at a certain level, their brand is everything they want it to be. And maybe at the level above where their position is, they feel incredibly insecure. Maybe everybody that is on their organizational level and everybody, that's in any way on that clinical ladder under their role, so let's say under a director role, might be managers, supervisors, they feel incredibly empowered. But everybody above their level, they feel incredibly insecure, which means they've worked their brand really well in certain people groups, and other people groups they haven't worked to enhance or extend it in such a way that they feel equally as seen, heard, valued. That's an important one. So I want you to look for patterns. I want you to look for people groups that maybe you can work to strengthen your brand within. I want you to look for people groups so that you can say, you know what, I want to be consistent. If this group is talking to this group and they say, well, here's my experience with her, and the other people group says, well, here's our experience with her. You need that kind of consistency across people groups. That is powerful and that is important. So I want you to consider patterns. I want you to consider people groups, and I want you to see authentically, realistically, where you can go to work. And I want you to develop 3 actionable items that you can do to build credibility, reliability, and empathy in your brand. Now, you can put one action under each one. There you go, right? And you will have satisfied my assignment for you. But I want you to spend the time looking at where you're currently demonstrating, where you're currently showing up. And then I want you to evaluate that and see whether you see patterns, people groups that maybe you can really create consistency of your brand. And then I want you to identify 3 actions. Doesn't have to be in all, in different buckets to me, just 3 actions that you will begin to do immediately to build better personal and professional relationships that will enhance and support your brand. Because at the end of the day, what you want is you want to make sure that the conversations going on about you are the ones you want to be going on about you. That the way people are handling you, handling your name, right? Handling your presence, your person, your professionalism, that is in keeping with how you desire to be talked about. Your brand is critically important. So I want you to begin doing that. And then I want you to just check in on yourself, see how you're doing and demonstrating those actionable steps. Maybe share it with a friend for shared, accountability. But I wanted to kind of leave you with, as we really think about, the end of this, like there is no conversation, there is no interaction that doesn't matter. All of our people nuances matter to the realm of our brand. They matter very much to what people say they can expect and how they experience us. So remember that your brand is certainly not just about yourself. Your brand is that cumulative perception, conclusion. It's how people say they feel about you, experience you. It's what they expect of you. It's all those things. And you and I have a lot to do about that. A brand is not a passive exercise. It is an intentional one that you and I must pay great attention to and give our focus and energy to so that we're not hit or miss. Our brand is consistent. People know exactly who we are, what we say we're about, and why we say we exist, what we solve while we're here. So thank you so much for showing up today. I appreciate the way you participated. I hope that you will join me as we continue conversations in the future about all things personal empowerment, all things personal development, all things potential. Because the thing that I want you to know is you are capable of far more than you've achieved. Listen, I'm Dr. Veronica. It's been a pleasure to be with you. I'll see you next time.